How's it going, everybody? Don't know why I just did that. Um, Justin here, back with another video. I did promise yesterday, not that anyone's going to notice, but yeah, got kind of busy yesterday, so couldn't really come on to make the video. Nevertheless, I'm back. Sunday, I talked about analyzing Stephen King novels, and boy, was that a trip. Almost an hour's worth of crazy comments and content by me analyzing the great Stephen King. But is he so great? Check out that video. Why am I here today? Back for another video, of course. And today's topic, little fun thing I'm going to do is my top 5 favorite horror films. Now, I feel like I've done this before, so if I have, then shame on me, but I don't feel like I have. But at the same time, I do. But anyway, without further ado, my top 5 favorite horror films. Now, full discretion, a couple things to note here. First and foremost, I'm not YouTube savvy, okay? I'm not tech savvy on here, so you're not going to see an image of the film that's one of my favorites on there, on either side of me. I've seen some people do that in the past. They have technology. They can do it. Good for them. I'm doing this live with what I have, okay? So just wanted to get that out of the way. Second, I have excluded. Sorry about that. Secondly, I have excluded Universal horror films from this list because that's its own list in itself, right? What are your top 5 favorite Universal horror films, right? So I've excluded those. I want to say discluded. So here we go. Without further ado, my top 5 favorite horror films, starting with number 5. So this one's a little crazy, but hear me out. I will defend it. Believe it or not, of all the films that are out there, right? My 5th favorite horror film, Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Now I already know what you're thinking. Really, Justin? Of all the horror films that are out there. So, again, I'm going to defend it. Here's why I like this one. First of all, I've seen this film probably more than a person probably should. I've seen this film probably more times than 4, 5, 6, and 7 of Friday the 13th, because the first 3, of course, are the best ones. But my favorite happens to be 8. But why? Well, there's a couple reasons. First of all, back in the day, you have to remember, they were pissing these things out, right? This was like the first one that was like they tried to make it really mainstream, and obviously it shows because they set it in Manhattan, even though I don't think it was, because most of it took place on a boat. Anywho, I just like, it's cheesy, but it's cheesy good, like the death scenes are good. The storyline's actually kind of interesting, because the storyline kind of goes in the depth of one of the girls has dreams about Jason when he's a boy, and it's connected to her when she was younger. The death scenes, like I said, they're kind of cool because every character. One of the things I really like about this, again, is because the characters are different compared to other films. Again, I'm sorry if I talked over myself there. In every Friday the 13th film, we always get the same people, right? Think about it. It's always Camp Crystal Lake. It's always camp counselors. They're always having sex. And very rarely, aside from Tina, the telekinetic, very rarely do people stand out as their own individual. So in 8, you've got this punk rock girl. You've got the jock. Then, of course, the main girl who dreams of him as when he's a boy. And there's a couple of other characters in there. Even the teacher, because I think they're on a school trip. And basically, I just think that because they're all they're all unique characters that really brings. And of course, um, when they're down in this, when the last two people are down in the sewer, and the way Jason dies by getting taken by the toxic waste, that's just really cool. So I know it seems really crazy that like that's your fifth favorite horror film. I'm sure I could easily fit in another one at five. Uh, and technically I do, but that's for another list. So for these reasons, because I've seen this one so much, because it's one that a lot of people probably don't like or care for, that's why I'm putting it at number five. And also I just wanted to like start off with a real wrench there. Just throw the wrench right in there and make it interesting. So my number five favorite horror film, Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. For number four, we're going to go all the way back to the 50s. Justin, you said no Universal Horror. I did. I said Universal Horror Monsters. My number four favorite horror film, House of Wax, 1953, I believe, with Vincent Price. Now, I have seen, of course, the new one with Paris Hilton. I even saw that at the theater. But that one's really good. But to me, the classic, the original, is definitely my favorite because number one, I loved Vincent Price. Love Vincent Price. He's great. Um, the whole concept, of course, if you don't know, Henry Jared, that's the character that Vincent Price plays. He is, of course, the proprietor of a wax museum, and he has a partner. His partner is just kind of sort of like ready to just check out, and I think he just kind of bought in with him because he wanted like the business. But after a while, he was like, "I'm done with this place," and he tries to buy him out, but he doesn't want to, and they end up fighting, and the place gets set ablaze. And wouldn't you know it, Henry Jared sets up once again in a bigger area, and one by one, people are killed off in mysterious ways, and the figures resemble real people. But how could that be? So yeah, it's also considered a crime in a lot of ways, but definitely got that. I always like the way that they interpret like wax as being like wax figures as being creepy, and that being like a horror trope. Obviously, I definitely like that considering I wrote three books called The Wax Factory, The Wax Menagerie, and The Wax Papers. Uh, and of course, House of Wax inspired me to write those books. And yeah, so I mean, I've seen this one a good dozen, over a dozen times, and I enjoy it every time I see it. And obviously, since it inspired novels, it's going to be in my top five. So, number four, House of Wax, 1953, with Vincent Price. Now, coming in at number three, House of a Thousand Corpses, Rob Zombie. I'll just get right into it, right? Did you see that one coming? Is that a little bit of a, oh, really, Justin? That's your third favorite horror film? Yes, it is. Uh, I had recently seen it as recent as, I want to say last year. Yep. So, what can you really say about this film? Uh, the funny thing is, you can clearly tell that the reason I like it is you can clearly tell that Rob Zombie was influenced by the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And the funny thing is, I had actually seen House of a Thousand Corpses before I ever saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I know, and there's Leatherface over here, like, there he is. There's Leatherface over there. Uh, so yeah, I'd actually seen House of a Thousand Corpses before, but even I knew, even before I had ever seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I was like, I feel like Texas Chainsaw Massacre inspired him because I'd seen clips, and of course, and I'd probably seen bits and pieces of the movie, but never actually sat down and watched it. But House of a Thousand Corpses, for those that don't know, is a really twisted horror film in the mind of Rob Zombie. Basically, there's this family called the Firefly family, as they're referred to, and these teenagers, their car breaks, their car breaks down, I think, or they have a flat tire, and like in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, they meet this person, which is Baby, played by Rob Zombie's wife, and she brings them back to her house while her brother, one of her brothers, fixes the car. But of course, if you take one look at this place and all the characters that come out of it, you realize that they're probably not leaving this place alive. And they don't. So, one by one, like these, pretty much it's like a carnival of freaks, if we're going to be honest here, in this house. Very similar, of course, to the fashion of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I would also go as far to say that they tend to be a little more over the top because obviously this is more modern. So back in the 70s, there was that, exploitation that, well, again, I'm talking about the other film over this one, but that over the top extreme horror or that shocking horror, but done tastefully, unlike Stephen King novels where it's thrown in there just for the sake of shock value. Like this shock value, it goes somewhere, You're like, wait a minute, are they going to do that? Oh my God, they did it. And then it leads somewhere else. That's one thing I really enjoyed about House of a Thousand Corpses because it's all like, why is it called that? You find that out, of course. There's like underneath the house is a freaking tunnel, and there's pretty much 1,000 corpses down there. There's a whole fortress down there of crazy, sadistic shit. Even more crazy than what's in the house. And it all just blends together so well. And yeah, then of course there's Fish Boy. Rainn Wilson, the guy from The Office who plays Dwight, gets turned into Fish Boy. That's always fun to watch. Bill Moseley playing, totally drawing a blank on his name right now. Otis, totally, there we go, yeah, Otis. So there's a lot of crazy and interesting characters, so I always enjoy watching it. The Devil's Rejects, the second one, don't like it as much as the first one. And then Three from Hell, I just don't even consider that being made because it's absolutely dreadful. So Rob Zombie, in the event that you ever watch this, I'm sorry, but Three from Hell was horrendous to me. But House of a Thousand Corpses, one of my top 5 favorite horror films. So coming in at number 2, Dawn of the Dead, 1978. So this one's a fun story. I had watched this as a kid because my parents, I wouldn't say my parents let me watch anything, they didn't, but my dad was more reserved to let me watch stuff. And I'd probably seen bits and pieces of it, and I always remember being referred to as like, I always remember getting references of this film told to me. Like, oh, the zombies are in the mall. There's zombies in a shopping mall. And I was just too young to really think that was cool. So I remember one night I was watching it with someone, and I stayed up past midnight watching it. And for some reason, it just resonated with me. And when I say I stayed up past midnight and I watched it one night, I want to say like maybe within the last 12 years. And I just remember like going to bed. I didn't even have a nightmare about the zombies afterwards, right? And it just really resonated with me. And then I just remember maybe about a year or two later, I watched it again. And a couple months after that, I'd watched it. And I'm like, wow, like this movie is just, this is what, everyone was telling me about when I was a kid or a teenager. And because they were trying to get me into horror and I didn't understand. And yeah, like the whole concept of Dawn of the Dead, for those that don't know, because they've never seen it, is it's the sequel to Night of the Living Dead. But I question that. It's obviously in the realm of the one to follow it, but the connection's not really there aside from the zombies attacking. But basically, it starts off like a news station. I can't talk. A news station, and they're talking about how the zombies are coming out, and eventually they attack the station, and this SWAT team, pretty much comes in, military, and they just take out all the zombies. But then there's zombies everywhere, right? So I believe 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. 4 of them go in a helicopter and they're flying around and they come across this mall. And they're like, hey, let's hide out in the mall. So that's what they do. And that's what the movie is. These 4 people hide out in a mall, in a shopping mall, and they're preventing the zombies from coming in. They kill the zombies that are already in there. They pretty much just set up shop for themselves. They make themselves a home. And it's really cool. And of course, even now it's got a cult following. I'm actually a member of the, excuse me, I'm actually a member of the Facebook group, Dawn of the Dead. And it's just a really fun film, in my opinion, because it's also got this kind of humor to it, the way some of the zombies are. And the makeup, the makeup's good, but it's also bad at the same time. But it works. That's why I love this film. It works. They took a simple concept and good acting, solid acting, and they put it in the film, and it just really works. And the last thing you really think of is like, wow, a shopping mall. Because if there's a zombie apocalypse, a shopping mall would be a cool place to go, right? I think so. Being someone that works in a mall, I'm like, there have been times where at the end of the night, in the middle, at the end of the night, or if I'm opening in the morning, I'll just look around and I'll be like, Dawn of the Dead. I've never seen a zombie. Thankfully, I never will. And if I do, I'm probably going to be more, wait a minute, what is this person doing dressed up as a zombie? And now, without further ado, my number 1 favorite horror film. Gee, I wonder what it is. I've talked about this before. It's got its own damn video. And it's right behind me. Of course, I'm referring to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, made in 1980. It is, of course, based off of Stephen King's book of the same name. Now, you might think it's kind of ironic, seeing as I shit-talked Stephen King in a whole 55-minute video on Sunday, but I am now praising him. Well, technically, I'm not praising him. It's more Stanley Kubrick, right? Why is The Shining my favorite horror film of all time? I don't really truly know the answer to that, other than the fact that I think the film is just, I think it's great. First things first, I would say that the first time I ever watched The Shining, I don't really remember. Again, I probably saw bits and pieces of it as a kid. The first time I watched it fully was probably as a teenager. And when I watched it then, that was probably the start to me, like saying to myself, this is going to be your favorite horror film and your favorite film ever. So I guess the first thing that I like about the film is that it's a slow burn horror film. What I mean by that is, obviously, there's a buildup of suspense, right? There's a buildup that we don't really see. We see very small glimpses of things, like the twins in the game room when Danny's throwing darts. What are these children doing here? We see the blood on the elevator when Danny's brushing his teeth. We see these little things, but we don't know. But what we don't know is that they're foreshadowing. It's a great use of foreshadowing for what we'll see later in the movie. Now, of course, it's still a slow burn because one could say that technically, if you take out Dick Halloran's death at the end of the film, well, it's not really a horror film. It's boring. Nothing happens. There have been memes that have been made about this, and I'm addressing someone that had actually posted it on Facebook. You could say that. But yeah, this person I'm friends with had posted about it. Like, oh, men who think The Shining is a horror film. Like, it's not. Like, how is it not a horror film? It is. It's a slow burn horror film. The whole suspense, the leading up to the creepy and scary parts are what make it good. In my opinion, the creepiest part in the film, which I'm pretty sure I'm not in the minority or alone on this, is Room 237, the shower scene. That's just, even being my favorite horror film, having seen the film so many times, that scene gets me every time. It creeps me out. Also, if you have to stop it to go to the bathroom while you're on that scene, don't. Just don't do that to yourself. I've done it on 2 occasions, and both times I've just taken my shower curtain like that, or I've just kept it the way it is. Like, nope. Not that I get scared, or not that I would expect to see anything in there, but yeah. The thing that I like is one of the things that Stephen King always kind of shit on. He never liked Jack Nicholson's portrayal of Jack Torrance because he always said he was crazy from the beginning. No, Stephen, he wasn't. That's just your opinion and your interpretation on Jack Nicholson's acting. He wasn't actually crazy at the beginning of the film. One could say he was something, but it wasn't crazy, I can tell you that. I think he was perfect for the film, and it definitely works. Uh, Shelley Duvall's acting, of course, I ripped on it for years until I found out that she was just traumatized by Stanley Kubrick. Now I've actually kind of respected it. You know, her being, afraid and frail is one of the things that makes the film good. I would say that the film would be maybe my only critique on this. Oh my God, I'm about to give a critique on The Shining. If they had given Shelley Duvall's character, a little more um, defiance against Jack, like it is in the book, I think it would have been just a little better on her part in the film. But obviously, I have a feeling that wasn't possible given the way that she was treated on set. If you don't know, Shelley Duvall was treated horribly on the set of The Shining. Uh, Danny also, they never told him that it was a horror film. That the kid that portrayed Danny, I think it's Danny Lloyd, and they never told him he was doing a horror film. It's like, how do you not know, right? Talk about being in the dark as a kid, right? But I think Danny's acting was good. They didn't give him too much of complicated things to say. The characters are great. The ghosts, like the ghostly presence of the the hotel. Obviously, just this overall creepiness, right? And to me, like the aesthetic, like the Indian motif stuff, just all of it just absolutely comes together. And I just love the film. Like there's something about it that just really speaks to me. So there you have it, my top 5 favorite horror films. And what's next? What will we do? What will Justin be doing next? Well, now that you've seen my top 5 favorite horror films, you're gonna get my top 5 most hated horror films. So I'm sure you're like, okay, that makes sense. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna end this video, and I'm actually gonna do the next video, my top 5 most hated videos, right after this. So for those that watch us on YouTube, do hit the subscribe button. That is always much appreciated. And do stay tuned for the next video. And if you also want to see more content by me, just scroll through my channel. You will see Mystery Unsolved, which is my series in which I analyze unsolved mysteries. And there's also Mystery Ghost Stories, and soon to be coming, Mystery Blue Book, where I will be analyzing UFO and alien cases. So until the next video, which is in like about less than 5 minutes,